All right, going to do a quick Steve Jackson Games Fantasy Trip / Fantasy Trip Adventures Kickstarter update, just because they've released a few. They are, I believe, 3 days away from ending the Kickstarter campaign for the Fantasy Trip Adventures, where they bundle together 5 total prepackaged adventures for your Fantasy Trip characters to go on. They are just shy of reaching the $40,000 mark in backing and have 2 remaining stretch goals left, or at least published. And the one at $50,000 would be that the adventures, rather than being published in a soft cover book, end up being published in a hardcover book. So keep in mind, the other thing is that this isn't just a way to fund the adventures, but if you missed out on the Legacy Edition and some of the add-ons for the initial the Fantasy Trip Kickstarter, you can purchase them through this Fantasy Trip Adventures Kickstarter and help fund towards the goal of getting the adventures bound in a hardbound book. So I'm going to switch over to something real quick here. Let me just bring it up. Along with the 6th update for Fantasy Trip Adventures, Steve Jackson also released an update with regarding the Fantasy Trip, and I'm going to find that real quick. So the people who back the Legacy Edition for the initial Kickstarter will be happy to know that hopefully next week all those wonderful huge cartons full of goodies will be getting onto a container ship and crossing the Pacific from China. The companion for the Fantasy Trip is laid out and going through final checks now, which is, I'll get to that in a second. But they are also looking at possible, these are, again, possible projects for the future of the Fantasy Trip, which include, and this is coming from Steve Jackson, so these are the apparent top ideas that he's considering. And if you hear white noise behind me, it's because it's raining and I'm in a warehouse and we have a steel roof. But the next ideas on the table are perhaps a book of monsters, a bestiary of some form. They want to do another book of adventures with the possibility of them being of a longer, perhaps campaign style. I'm reading into that. That's me saying it. Campaign style adventure. And he himself, Mr. Jackson, has said that he has almost finished translating the GURPS introductory solo All in a Night's Work to the Fantasy Trip system. But he himself says he's not quite certain what they'll do with that, where that will go. And possibly more character cards like those that will be included with the Legacy Edition, and possibly several other kinds. I'm guessing loot drops, reference, randomization, etc. And he finished out that note by thanking everyone for the continued support, which has been very fun to watch as a participant. I will also leave the link to the unboxing of the Fantasy Trip Legacy Edition box that they did yesterday, Thursday. And it's pretty impressive, the amount of stuff that they got in there. So if you see the price tag on it initially and think, well, like $120, I believe, is the price, and that's a lot of money. But when you look at everything that's in there, it's crazy, and the amount of fine work that they've done on this. So I'm going to jump over real quick here and see if I can find the other the other item that I wanted to touch on was they did an update about the Fantasy Trip Companion, and I guess people are a little unclear on what's going on with that. I've seen the PDF for it, but they released the information with the book in pre-press and set for final checks next week. We can state with certainty that the title includes the following: 14 Space Gamer articles, 1 Fantasy Gamer article, 5 Different Worlds articles, 1 Pegasus article, 2 Dungeoneer articles, 2 daily Illuminator posts, and 7 works first published at the fantasytrip.game. The press reads, that's a mix of game support articles, short adventures, Steve's original designer notes, reviews of the original game, and game variants alongside newer works. By collecting those old articles into one place, the companion makes for a great historical snapshot, as well as gives players and GMs new ideas to expand the game. So there's that. Keep an eye on it. I'll put a link down below for the ongoing Fantasy Trip Adventures campaign, where you can get yourself not only the adventures, possibly push it to being published hardbound, but also the Legacy Edition box if you missed out, as I said, on the first campaign, and some other cool stuff that they're putting in for add-ons. So there you go. Have a good one. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.